Hi, welcome to the Google Hangout, and today we are discussing the inflation of reality, which is something that just by hearing the terms can mean many things, especially within the realm of economics, but today we are broadening the perspective of what this term really implies when we look at the value systems that we have imposed upon our reality. And today we have Viktor Persson from Sweden. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, it's okay.
And sorry, my cat. So let's begin with this. What does the term inflation refer to in terms of how we've been discussing it, in terms of looking at this value imposed upon reality and how that has separated us from physical reality? What does this mean?
Yeah, so I look at it like a balloon. For example, when you take a balloon, in order to make it big and fill with air, you have to inflate it. So that's like what we then do with points in our reality. Like we make them more than what they are. We create these values that are not aligned with reality. Like there's something more than what the physical point actually entails.
So that's exactly what we've done with our entire monetary system, for example, where money, we were discussing off air how it is created out of essentially black numbers, dead numbers, which means debt. How does this work?
Yeah, well, we have something called fractional reserve banking, and what this means is you can hear it in the name, like fractional reserve. So that means that the bank will have some real money in its deposits. For example, they have $10,000 there, and now they can lend out money and have only a fraction in reserve. So for example, they get then $10,000 from some guy that wants to deposit his money, and now they can lend out $9,000 and only keep $1,000 in reserve. So that's a fractional reserve, which means that they're in essence creating money from thin air.
And that's how we call our banking system one of the richest industries in our world system, because they are in essence, yes, making money out of thin air. But how does this affect our reality, meaning in practical terms? If I'm not someone that is going to invest, how does this entire monetary value imposed upon our physical reality, and how does it affect who we are within this world according to the amount of money that we have, for example?
Yeah, well, you can look at it like this. For example, someone loans money. Now this money is money made from thin air. I mean, they don't have a value that is correlated to them. They're just money that is lent out, and now they're dipped. And so this guy, he builds a house for his money. And so let's say now this guy is not able to pay back his loan, and so he forecloses on his house. Now the bank will in essence have stolen physical labor, because I mean, consider that there was a process in creating that house, which is labor, and now that labor has been in essence sort of infested and with debt. It's seen as debt. And then the wealthy guys at the bank, they get that money, and or they get that resource as the house, but what they've given in return, I mean, it's nothing. It's thin air. So it's like a deceptive point, the entire banking system.
It's like a legal way of actually committing a robbery, in essence, which is the same way in how, for example, corporations that take the property of the resources that actually belong to the people and the nation, in essence, how just a few individuals say, well, I take the resources of water, which is obviously happening all over the world with now selling bottled water and everything at exorbitant prices, while that resource actually belongs to the people. So that is, yes, committing an act of robbery, an act of treason that they're actually making money of. And we accept and allow that. So what's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question. Why have we accepted and allowed this? And really, the only point that I'm able to see as to why we've done that is because, I mean, let's look at how we grew up. I mean, our parents, did they ever say to us, hey, we bought this house with money that we had loaned, and I mean, we don't have any money, we have to loan them, and we earn like our salary, that is not enough for us to actually buy a house. So we're in essence, wage slaves. We have this big debt, and we are unable to actually become financially free. Like, they didn't ever tell that to us as children. Nobody explained how really unequal our system is. It was like you just grew up with it and was like completely normal. And I guess that is why nobody ever questions the point and ever asks themselves like, but what is really going on here?
Yeah, exactly. We are just born into it, and we accept the fact that, you're going to be looking at poor people outside of your house. You might have a good and nice living standard, and you might see even wealthier people, but how things work, yes, it's never explained. But this has to do also with how we accept the money as a paper thing, as a value system in itself, and we start defining who we are around this single aspect that, as it has been explained, it's not something physical, as you were also explaining. It doesn't correlate to anything in reality, but it's an agreement within people. So why have we only come to see these very aspects the moment that nothing is working in the world? Like, what is happening right now that we are now beginning to question this? Because it has happened before in history, but right now no one and nothing in the world is working. So what comes next? What's going to happen? What's your perspective on that?
Like, you mean how this point will develop, you mean?
Yeah, how it will essentially come to a point where we either create a change in the system or people revolt, etc., because there's many outcomes.
Yeah, I mean, for example, one guy that had an interesting perspective on like what this will result in is Chris Hedges, and he in essence explained how this state of the world that we live in now, it's a form of extreme hierarchy where some people become so what do you say, weakened, that they have nothing to live for anymore. And I mean, what does that create? When you have nothing to live for, when you have nothing to fear, that means you have nothing to fear and you're pissed off. I mean, then you can go out and really harm somebody. And I think that is something that might happen a lot in the future. Like these poor people going out and really fucking things up because they don't have anything to live for.
And we see how we've also explained many times how this brings consequence, but what we haven't realized is that as long as there's one single person that doesn't have their basic needs satisfied, there will be injustice, there will be inequality, obviously, but there will also be aspects that will influence even those that also see themselves as protected by the system, which is something that we haven't really kind of realized or actually acknowledged, to what extent the poverty that we believe is outside or separate from us isn't really separate from us, because what we consume as our benefits, as our wealth, the money that we have is essentially made out of those that don't have the money, that are, as you were saying before, wage slaves, and that simply leaves everything in this status quo wherein nothing changes. we see people, yes, going into this rage. So what are the solutions that we're proposing in this term, in case of basic income guaranteed, of course? How does this value aspect then has to be a realization within people that we can change the system?
Yeah, well, I didn't really understand like the last point. Can you sort of specify the question a little bit more?
Yeah, it's essentially how, if you have people that are being enraged by their position and we haven't done anything about it throughout history, what are the solutions that we're proposing now with basic income guaranteed, for example, in terms of education, as we were mentioning, but also in relation to this system of values? How can it be taught? How can it be explained or shared with people to get the aspect of, yes, we can change the system and we can make a better world for everyone?
Well, as I see it, one of the points that is important to understand is that really poverty is fictional. It's not real, because if you look all around you, I mean, there are lots of resources available. And I mean, every human being is in essence his own resource, because everybody is able to labor and build and learn new skills. I mean, really, there is no recession as we believe it is. It's simply a point that has been manufactured through deception. So what is to be understood is that, I mean, only through changing the point of employment or labor and giving that point actual value, and not, because currently that point is deflated, and what is inflated is instead the profit of some very few people. But if we take that point of labor, that each one has as a resource, we're able to empower everyone and give everyone hope. And as such, we will create a reality where people are actually motivated to make something really cool out of their lives, and not just, become pissed off and destroy things.
Yeah, exactly. How I see it as well is that if you see that there's no human being left out of the equation in the world system, then you will obviously be motivated to work for that system. And as Noam Chomsky was also explaining this aspect of labor, only the people that have been indoctrinated within the system of you work because you require the money and you require a certain status, and kind of only being shaped, their profession, who they are, their personality, everything around money. Those are the people that, for example, complain that, oh no, why should everyone that don't even work get money to live? Because I work for my money, I work for my status, my position. Those are the people that are currently the problem when we talk about giving money to those that won't even work, because basic income guaranteed also implies that those that don't work, those that are currently called the freeloaders or free riders, so how are they called? They will also get money, the same as people that, for example, the mothers or the wives in the house that also do work. They currently don't get any form of wage. They only get the money from the husband. So for them to also become financially independent and secured and not be bound, for example, in relationships that are destructive, they will also get money. And within this, if this becomes a certainty at a global level, then obviously we will all be motivated to actually become individuals that say, yes, I want to live within the system because I know that everyone is being supported, that no one is really paying for each other's wage, for example, that my taxes are paying that person's wage or basic income that is, and that person is not working and creating that kind of friction, but instead saying we are living in a world where by virtue of human rights, our living right is being guaranteed with this living income guaranteed. So in essence, it's kind of like shifting that system, that value system within ourselves. What would you say about this?
Well, in terms of shifting the value system, it would be that understanding that if I give another value, I mean, this won't mean that I lose something, because that is missed in our current system. We think that, I mean, if I earn lots of money and if I save these and just buy stuff for myself and I refuse to give anything away, then this will apparently empower me. But what is not understood is like the point of interconnectedness, and that when I, for example, give another cool salary, let's say I'm an entrepreneur and I have this big business, and I decide to give my employees really high salaries that are in alignment with the labor they do, I mean, that will have an influence on my business. My profits will become even more, because now I empower another financially, and I mean, that makes more money in the system. So I would say that the value shift must be from glorifying individualism to understanding that actual empowerment comes from like interconnectedness and empowering one another.
Exactly. That is also how within this equation of you win, I win, we have kind of overlooked that throughout time, because we have also always left some out of the equation and said, well, I win and you lose, so that's how I keep you enslaved. But that's how, as we were saying, people get obviously they are enraged, they start protesting. I mean, all of that can be easily solved just by saying to these people, by virtue of your human rights, here is this living income guaranteed, and live well, because that will also make, for example, these people eventually, even by virtue of understanding this interconnectedness that you're explaining, go out and work and then actually contribute to create this world, a functional living system wherein everyone is even having a happy living standard, so to speak, because you will be able to actually pursue a real happiness within it, because you know that no one is left behind.
Yeah.
So what about the inflation aspect? We have only a few minutes. In terms of the products, as we were discussing off air, how we have imposed this value system in terms of you can buy a bicycle in Sweden for how many euros there?
500.
500 euros.
Yeah.
So that's like a shitload of money here. Well, here you can buy a bicycle maybe for 70 euros, and it's fairly decent. How have we come to accept these exchange rates?
Well, I mean, I'm in the process of trying to understand how it actually functions, but I don't really know. It's so hard. It's like, why is a point here more worth than a point over there? It's like, it doesn't make any sense.
Exactly, it doesn't make any sense, and that's why it's become such a difficult point, because economics, as we will also be discussing in future hangouts, it's only a theory to make everything very convoluted and very complicated, so that the regular people like you and myself cannot really make any sense out of it, because it's actually made in purpose to, so that only those that know how the game works, the rules of the game that are created just to benefit a few, know how to play in the game and win the game. So this whole point of exchange rates is really just another tactic for obviously the people that have the most money as the world power countries, essentially have power over those that have most of the times have all the resources and have the least currency value, which means that all the people that can buy more in, let's say, Mexico or South Africa or third world countries are obviously the people that throughout history have become very well recognized within the entire world system to say, well, we are the world powers and we have the ability to buy 12 of your pesos, 12.50 of your pesos for $1, for example. And that's another belief system, that's another value system, that's the whole inflation of reality at a worldwide level, wherein it is simply just an agreement. Just as money has become an agreement of abuse, the exchange rates is just an outflow of that. And if you look at the history of how that was created, it doesn't make any sense, because it begins with gold and it begins in England, and we know that the power that England has accumulated throughout history just through abuse. And that's how our exchange rates are even currently still existent. So obviously with a basic income guaranteed, we're also looking at, yes, it will have to be like €1, 1 yen, 1 peso, $1 will be the same, because there is no need to have these power systems in our exchange rates or currencies, etc. So that's why it doesn't make sense, because it's just a make-believe system, in essence. Okay, would you like to add anything to this?
Well, I can just add that, I mean, in terms of walking through one's life, that it's a cool practice one can apply to look at all the points that are marketed and look at how the value of them are inflated, and that you don't really see the product as its physical reality. You just see like a picture and like, wow, here is a great product. But like what the product actually consists of and the relationships that made that product possible, that point doesn't exist.
Exactly. We are obviously very picture driven and only see, as you were explaining with the car, a shiny car, but who made that car? Where are the resources taken from? How are the workers living in? Is that all of that actually taken into consideration within the final price that we're paying for, or are we only paying for the image or the experience that we get from the car? And that's also another form of inflation in reality. So thanks a lot for joining us, and as a point of exercise just for everyone, as you were saying, to start investigating within your reality how we have accepted this inflation point, not only from all the aspects that we have discussed in this hangout, but also very simple things where you can look at things for what they are and not the value that they have imposed to you, in terms of the media, or how we have come to kind of make of gold this kind of deity, when in fact it's just another metal. And within that, we will start debunking the very basic foundation of the entire deception, which is the inflation of reality. Thanks for watching, and join us next week for another hangout. Thank you, Viktor.
Yeah, thanks.
Bye, everyone.